I'm going to go on the record and say 99% of cinematic nudity is categorically wrong, not okay, we shouldn't participate in it. That's my line.
As a writer, filmmaker, podcaster, content creator, whatever label fits, my argument is that there is a tool. Nudity is a tool of storytelling. The question becomes, what is it you're trying to say?
Welcome to the Naked Gospel, where shame has no power, God's glory is boundless, and we get to carry that story in our bodies. Here we have conversations about sex, singleness, marriage, pornography, parenting, everything beyond and in between. We're featured on every major podcast platform, as well as YouTube. So please like, subscribe, share, so that you can join the movement that is already achieving a revival of sexual integrity throughout the entire kingdom.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another fabulous episode of the Naked Gospel podcast. Here with a friend that has been in my orbit for the last few years. Every time we hang out, we are close to getting into some kind of trouble, and it's probably a bit of luck that we don't live next door to each other. Otherwise, there would be much trouble to be had. I would like to introduce you to Mr. Paul MacDonald of the Men at the Movies podcast, of which I have been an illustrious guest a few times. I have been a man at the movies with you, and you've enjoyed them so far. We haven't yet had a movie that you hated that we talked about on your podcast. There was the one that you didn't love all the way. I'm still a little upset about that.
What, the On a Clear Day?
Yeah, you said you didn't love it all the way.
No, I enjoyed that by the end. Remember, after our conversation, I was like, looking at it through this lens, this is a much more powerful movie.
Yeah.
Than what I anticipated. It was great.
It took a while to get. It was like you had seen the movie, and you were beyond having seen the movie before the rest of you could enjoy it.
Well, I described it like a good peaty scotch.
Yeah.
Which you have to take time to really appreciate and acquire a taste for. So I stand by that analogy.
Okay, so On a Clear Day is now in the category of top shelf scotch.
Apparently so.
Okay, all right. Then I feel like we're batting 1,000. And now you come into my house, want to stir up trouble in my yard. I mean, we got some things to talk about today. But before we do, how would you like people to encounter you? How does one begin to know Mr. Paul MacDonald?
Oh man, that's a much bigger intro than I was anticipating. How do you get to know Paul MacDonald? Well, we know each other through this men's retreat, through Proven, originally, and then through the men's retreat that we do here. And so for the last over a decade, my life has been transformed through this walk with Jesus, and like every day growing deeper that union with him. And that, I hope, shapes the rest of my life, which we'll probably talk about it here in a few minutes of how does that work? But this idea, I'm married. We've been married for 15 years. It's both of our second marriages. She brought a son. I brought 3 kids, a daughter and 2 sons into this. And now we have 2 grandkids and 2 dogs. We live here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And a couple years, I worked for about 20 something years as a nurse and stepped away from that. Not to do the podcast. I was already doing the podcast. Been doing that for almost 5 years now. But to set that aside, because my wife was an executive, she was going to get her doctorate. Felt like I needed to be there to support her. My daughter, she had a young son. I watched him while she would work. And so I stepped away from work altogether, which is Probably, and I was a nurse, and so for me to say that was one of the most emasculating things I've ever done said something, because so much of what we do is tied, so much of who we are is tied to what we do. Even to the fact, like, my wife at the end of the day, she'd be like, "Oh, how was your day?" And I would give her this list of all these things I did. And she's like, "I just wanted to know if you had a good day or not." It's like, the weather would be nice. She's like, "You should go out on the hammock." So, I'm much harder on myself than she is. Uh, so that this is a long rambling intro, but we started, the Men at the Movies podcast is sort of a, out branching from the men's events, from the Wild at Heart content, where we'll take a movie, and at these events, you'll see a movie clip that they'll talk about and kind of parallel it to our lives. We go deep into the movies and really say, okay, well, why did this scene connect? Why does this hit? And it's led to some really amazing, powerful conversations and great relationships. And like, I think there's so many people in my life now that weren't around that they're only in my life because of the podcast. And that's really the coolest gift that I've got out of that.
I want to go back just a couple beats, and then we resume the Men at the Movies wavelength. When you talked about being an emasculated nurse, we should contextualize that your background was the most masculine context in which a man could become a nurse, right?
Through the military?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I went to nursing school, I actually was like, I think my semesters of prerequisites were on my credit card. I was like, I can't put nursing school on my credit card. I didn't say it was, I was like 22, 23, 25, somewhere in there. Not very wise. And so I was like, I need some help. And so I went to the Air Force. They said all our scholarships are taken up. Went to the Army. They said, we might have a spot. If we do, you've got to go to this 6-week camp, which starts like next week, to get caught up on the 2 years you've missed, and then be an ROTC, go to another camp next summer, but we'll pay for school. I said, okay. So so I was in the Army for a couple of years, was deployed to Iraq for 5 months back in 2004. And I had 2 small kids, missed my son's first birthday. And so I'm like, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. So I got out of the military and we moved to Charlotte. But yeah, being, I think the percentage of men in nursing is under 10. It may be closer to like 3. Not many. So I definitely was flying solo in a lot of meetings.
But since then, for the rest of your life, you've been permitted to introduce yourself as a bona fide combat medic.
No.
Don't take this away from me. Don't.
No. I can't, because I know what combat medics do.
All right.
And they are so much more hardcore. They are the ones, because I have a friend who's combat medic.
Yeah.
You might know him, Eric Bird. But he actually was with like these elite units going into war zones, patching guys up under fire, doing all those things. I never had to do that. When I was in Iraq, I was in a big base. I never had direct fire at me. Worked in a tent hospital. I said it's like that show MASH, but instead of the jungle, it was just dirt. And all the variety of characters available as well.
If I keep calling you a combat medic, is anybody going to target me?
Not me.
Okay, great.
You'll have to answer to Eric.
I'm not worried about him. Come at me, Eric. Come at me with that combat medic life. Well, it's been a big road. Like, that's a lot of life to try to condense into a couple minutes.
Well, like we were talking before, I was like, I turned 50 this year. And how do you condense 5 decades into that? I mean, how do you condense 1 decade into an intro?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was when you and I were first becoming more familiar with each other. You sent me that clip of the guy who's got his buddy over for a podcast episode. They get to the end of it, and then the buddy's like, wait a second. The microphone's not even plugged into anything. He's like, yeah, sorry. I just wanted to talk and hang out. And seems like this is the only way to do that anymore. He's like, well, I guess it's been a nice 2 hours. He's like, yeah. You want to plug anything before we go? And I'm looking back, and it's kind of true that the bulk of my relationship with you has been over a microphone.
Yeah, well, that's because when you come into town, I make sure to leave.
It's so busted. Every time I'm in your neighborhood, you are unavailable.
I wish I could say it was purposeful because that would be funny, but yeah, it's not. And even this weekend when you were here, I was planning on coming, but between my grandson and sort of the cough that your listeners will be hearing, it's like, I can't make it. Stogies and bourbon in a hot tub by a fire pit. Doesn't get much better than that.
It was all the things. But I'm going to be gracious, and I'm not going to rub your nose in it. What a great time it was without you there on the most recent installment of my passing through your town and not being able to see you.
Wailer's you've even stayed at my house and I didn't see you. Or at my father-in-law's house. Was that when? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the other thing is like there's been stretches of 3 days where it wasn't like I was just at a rest stop. There's been 3 days where you are emphatic about being unavailable.
You just tell me, hey, I'm going to be there on these dates. And that's the problem. You need to coordinate those. We need better coordination ahead of time before the plans are made.
Okay. Challenge accepted.
There we go.
The next time it happens, it will definitely be your fault because I can sense it coming again. It's like now we can't meet in person unless it's at some other event. There's some sort of spiritual law of physics happening.
It's like Superman and Clark Kent. You never see them in the same place at the same time.
Yeah, I was going with like quantum disentanglement, something like that. Like we're quantumly repelled from each other. I don't like it. I'm just trying to read the signs. Well, tell me, when you are doing a lot of life with men over the microphone, the hub of the conversations is where are you discovering yourself and where are you encountering God in cinema, right? Is that much of the Men at the Movies ride?
Yeah. Man. I encounter God and myself a lot in movies nowadays. It's sort of like the more I do it, the more I do it. So you start watching these movies or TV shows or even books, and you start seeing these themes that emerge. Like I'm gonna bust myself out a little bit. Actually went into AI. I use Claude for my AI stuff, but I was like, I just finished this book series. I'm like, hey, tell me some more books I'd like to read. So Claude's asking me all these questions, and then it's giving me recommendations, and I'm like, I read that, didn't like it, like this one. Same thing with movies. I was like, I love this movie. And then I said, okay, here are the stories that I love: movies, TV shows, books. What does this say about the characters? What stories am I most drawn to? And the reaction was a wounded idealist who refuses to drown. I was like, and it would come up, and I've been doing some story profile work, and I'll have other people do something similar with me, and we'll go through and almost like a strength finders but with movies. And then you realize, our premise is the stories that we love reveal something about who God called us to be. And I was like, wait, I don't want to be a wounded idealist who refuses to drown. That's a guy who gets beat up all the time, still comes back with the wisecracks, and very Spider-Man-esque lifestyle where he sees the people he care about get hurt because of who he is. And I was like, wow, that is challenging. So, like I said, that premise of the stories that we love show us, and I think this is even in our intro, is the stories we love are gateways to who God called us to be. And connecting with that, as we connect with that, we connect more deeply with our hearts. And as we connect more deeply with our hearts, we sort of connect more deeply, right? You can't get to 10 feet unless you go to 8 feet first. So a lot of the healing that I've experienced over the last couple of years, not that it's come through movies, but there are points in movies that I remember watching a movie and there was a scene that just wrecked me, and my wife just kind of turned around. She's like, we're going to have a conversation about this. And it was about my friend dying. I was like, the scene triggered that emotion of seeing my friend for the last time. And I was like, okay, why does this scene bother me? Why does this scene cause me to tear up? Why does this scene why do I want to go charge the hill? Does it inspire me? Like when you get those moments, I think that's the Holy Spirit trying to get our attention and saying, hey, kind of whispering and inviting us into something more.
How is it when you inhabit that space with your wife after a raw scene like that?
It's sort of like many of our conversations, honestly, where we sort of like, you start picking at a thread a little bit, and I'm a verbal processor. So I like talking things out. That's why the AI stuff helps, is because I can spit stuff out and it sees patterns in the stuff that I'm saying. And I'm like, no, that's not quite right. My wife's actually also really good at that. Even last night we were having this conversation and she called something out and I was like, oh yeah, that's true. I got to write that down. But it's that back and forth of saying, hey, this scene really hit me. What's going on? The first time she ever seen me cry was watching Interstellar. Because I was getting ready. I was working on my son. He's 22 now. He was 13 at the time, putting stuff together for his like rite of passage ceremony from boyhood into like preparation for manhood sort of thing. And Interstellar's on, and that scene where he goes back and he's seeing his younger daughter. He's like, Murph, don't make me leave, Murph. And that, again, being a divorced dad, of that pain of the trauma that I know I inflicted on the kids and my first wife through my actions. But then looking at all these pictures of things that my son and I had done over the years, and I just start crying, and I go into the kitchen and my she's cooking risotto, and it's something you have to constantly stir for like an hour. And she's like, what's going on? I'm like, I'm not a terrible father. And she's like, I would hug you, but I'm risotto. So I went over there and I stirred the risotto so she could hug me. So it's those sorts of things where you're like, you sort of, if you allow it, my brother, he doesn't like emotions. So he's not as expressive. And so he avoids those sorts of moments that make you feel things. And he's an emergency physician. So that makes sense because he feels a lot of things at work. And so he needs a space where he feels safe. And that's okay too.
It's okay if I don't make any mention in your answer to this next question. Like, you're allowed to not say my name. Okay. But like, you've got some miles of tape. You've been in the podcast game for a while. You got an impressive number of episodes out there. Do you have a greatest hits where you're like, either favorite movie or just favorite pocket with a fella? It's like, man, that one, we were really just on the level there. There's gotta be most memorable occasions for you.
One that's come to mind is doing Top Gun Maverick, which I did with one of my best friends, Andreas. We
Super
got
guy.
together. We ended up hanging out the rest of the day on the porch, even after we recorded.
So this is a guy that's allowed to see you when he's in town, clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he lives in town, so
Mm.
that makes it easier.
I see. Okay.
Honestly, the other one that's sticking out is our Band of Brothers series
Mm.
that you were a part of,
Sure. I was there.
where we went over each episode to look at sort of how I apparently like maps and guides, and I like things. So looking at Band of Brothers is sort of a roadmap of initiation, and you see that as Easy Company goes from they're volunteers. They're at their version of jump school. And then they go on, and by the end, they're victorious. They're the first ones to Eagle's Nest and experiencing all the delights of victory and all that. And then looking at what it takes in between those moments was one of my favorite. One of my, obviously, series. We haven't done too many series sorts of things, but that was one of my favorite things that we did, was that Band of Brothers series.
That was a good run.
Yeah.
And that was the genesis of a really cool nickname that you gave me.
That's right.
I think you might have said it first at the Outpost, but it didn't really get ratified until that email exchange. We were planning episodes. Because, when we're at the men's retreat, I am sensitive to how many directions you're being pulled in as a guy that's emceeing. You got to be conscious of the schedule. There's not really a time where you can just be fully chill. Like, some of your radar's got to be up for the event all the time. So I find you at lunch, and I'm kind of like tiptoeing over. It's like, hey, am I interrupting you? Because if this is chill time for you, I don't want to mess that up. You're like, no. Go ahead, sit down. 10 minutes later, check with you again. It's like, hey, dude, if you need to be by yourself, it's fine. And you're like, you are easy company.
Yep. Easy.
I was like, all right, cool. But I didn't connect the dots until we did the Band of Brothers, and you started calling me that somewhat more regularly. I was like, I like this a lot. If I had that as like an AKA in life, Thomas Giles, AKA Wailer, AKA Easy Company. It's pretty decent moniker.
Right. And yeah, because we would, there's guys that you sit with that this silence sometimes feels uncomfortable. Or you're always feeling like you're having to fill the space or ask some questions or tell stories. I'm not really like that. I just sort of like sitting back and breathing sometimes. And so that's, what you and I would do is we were just sitting there and enjoying thinking deep thoughts and not so deep thoughts. And whenever something would come up, we'd be like, oh, what about this? And we'd start down another rabbit hole.
On the way to the Eagle's Nest. Well, that's cool. I'm glad that I was at least adjacent to Favorite Men at the Movies podcast memories.
Yeah.
What do you got coming down the pipe? You got Men at the Movies stuff you're looking forward to?
Yeah, so starting in 2026, we're kicking off the new year with a Wada Hart made this docuseries last year on YouTube. If you want to check it out, Wada Hart docuseries, just search for that and you'll find it. But it's a 4-chapter mini series where they talk about men broken men whose lives were transformed by the power of the gospel. There's 4 chapters, and it was so interesting. I was at an event where they premiered the trailer, and John Eldridge was there, and he's like, we had to be very careful about who we selected because we had to select guys whose lives wouldn't get blown up by the warfare they faced. And I hear that, I'm like, I want to be a guy whose life doesn't get blown up by the warfare, thinking these guys are tanks. They're like layers on layers of armor. Nothing touches them. That's not how warfare works. The warfare comes whether it's doubt, loss, attacks, spiritual attacks, you name it. You've seen it in the world. Marriages fail, kids get sick, friends die, those things that cause you to doubt the truth of what is actually the truest things in the world is that God loves us and God is good. And everything the warfare that gets thrown at us is to make us doubt that truth. And that's how we blow up our lives in response to the warfare. Like this, I see this thing happening. Like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing the podcast? And I have a few hundred listeners, and this other guy does this thing. He just started, he has 27,000. What am I doing? I should just stop. And that's when I was like, oh, I'm the one who blows up his life. The enemy can't blow up my life. Only I can blow up. Which I'm not sure. So I was like, how did I get there?
Talking about things you got coming up.
Yeah, so starting in January, and we do 2 episodes a month now. I actually got to have conversations with the filmmaker and each one of the guys who was in the docuseries. And we talk about one of their favorite movies. And so we've got Pablo talking about The Kid and Leo talking about Cinderella Man. Sam talks about Field of Dreams, and Mark, who's this really cool artist in London who combines leather work with artwork, of course wanted to combine 2 movies, and we talked Matrix and Far and Away, which makes sense, right? So that's coming out at the very beginning of the year, and that's one that took me over a year to track down all 5 of those guys and get them on the podcast. So I'm super excited to finally put that out.
Yeah. All right. So since you spent time with them and the way you just talked about the framework that John Eldridge had for it, did you see similarities? Did you find common denominators of those guys in the kind of man that doesn't get detonated?
They are comfortable with who they are, and they are secure in who they are in God. And that is an unshakable thing. You know, when as we were saying before, you know, we're approaching the stage of life where people around us are starting to get sick, some die. And how do you deal with that? How do you grieve that loss? As your kids get older and they start suffering setbacks and struggles, and there's nothing that you can do for them to help them get jobs or succeed in school, and you can only do so much. And how do you manage that internal struggle and with your faith and be like, okay, God, you're in charge. You've got them. Can I align my heart with His and His purpose and His plans and His initiation of my children, my wife, my friends, myself? I really don't like His plans for me sometimes. But then how will I trust Him in those moments? And those are guys who will trust Him in those moments because you have to go through those moments. And that's how your faith gets. Faith is seeing something that doesn't exist. And that's why, you know, creativity is basically the same thing. You have to have faith. You have to see it before you can create it. And so to see a future that exists, regardless of your external circumstances, because you're internally settled, I wish I had more of that.
Buddy, I don't know if I've ever heard that tandem before, the relationship of faith to creativity.
I don't know that I've ever said it before. Like, I've thought them in separate. Like, you know, people say, oh, I'm not creative. It's like doing a spreadsheet's creative. Something didn't exist. You saw it and you created it. your kids. You see an adult and you're helping to shape that young person into an adult. Like, creativity is not, all painting and woodworking. It's just, hey, something doesn't currently exist that you can bring into existence.
This happens every time you and I have a conversation.
Well, you want to pull out one of your quotes? I love your quotes.
You said that with like borderline contempt. Oh, you want to pull out one of your quotes? I said this
Look how
happens
smart I am. I have this 4-page quote that I have memorized.
a lot. All right, well, listen, I'll take the edge off because this is one I don't have memorized, okay? But it's a poem I remember, and it's so on point with what you're talking about that I have to look it up. I can't get through the rest of this conversation with you without visiting this poem. S, and I found it faster than I thought I would. Are you familiar with Seamus Heaney?
I actually am.
Yeah.
By familiar, I have a book of his on a shelf somewhere in my house.
Excellent. So you'll like this quote of mine that I've spent time with you. So Seamus Heaney, the poem is titled Digging. Between my finger and my thumb, the squat pen rests, snug as a gun. Under my window, a clean rasping sound when the spade sinks into gravelly ground. My father, digging. I look down, till his straining rump among the flower beds bends low. Comes up 20 years away, stooping in rhythm through potato drills where he was digging. The coarse boot nestled on the lug. The shaft against the inside knee was levered firmly. He rooted out tall tops, buried the bright edge deep to scatter new potatoes that we picked, loving their cool hardness in our hands. By God, the old man could handle a spade, just like his old man. My grandfather cut more turf in a day than any other man on Toner's bog. Once I carried him milk in a bottle, corked sloppily with paper. He straightened up to drink it, then fell to right away, nicking and slicing neatly, heaving sods over his shoulder, going down and down for the good turf, digging. The cold smell of potato mold, the squelch and slap of soggy peat, the Kurtz cut of an edge through living roots awaken in my head. But I've no spade to follow men like them. Between my finger and my thumb, the squat pen rests. I'll dig with it. I love the reflection of a poet looking at the men that he came from that were laborers, but he would see the poetry in their spades. And he wants to be a poet worthy of the caliber of their labor.
Yeah. As good as what he does, as good as, oh my gosh, I can't say that. He wants to be as good as what he does as they were at what they did.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, like, it's a different kind of work. It takes as much effort and dedication and muscle and sweat and blood and all the things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are you ready to have an argument?
Yeah. I thought we just did about poetry.
We argued about apparently my obnoxious penchant for pulling quotes out of his pocket.
You're the one who called it obnoxious. I didn't say that word.
Your tone didn't sound flattering. You just say it that way. I'll invite the listener to go back and review the tape. Oh, are you going to pull another quote out? I didn't even get to set up, oh, hey, I'm going to do that thing again. And you were just like right there. You knew. You knew what the thing was. In fairness, there might have been a time or two where I did quote some long form poetry on your podcast before. That might have happened. But you liked it.
It was not as critical as you were taking it.
All right. Well, we have the Naked Gospel podcast and we have the Men at the Movies podcast converging. There's only one topic that would be most sensible to broach together, and that would definitely be nudity in cinema. I'm going to go on the record and say 99% of cinematic nudity is categorically wrong, not okay, we shouldn't participate in it. That's my line. The 1%, and I haven't had to qualify this until this moment. If I was going to do my homework better, probably would have. But like, newborn baby, that's technically nudity. I'm not going to say that's wrong. Maybe there should still be some decorum, you know. And then there might be some others. So like I'm leaving a 1% maybe factor so that it's not this rigid, flexible fundamentalism. But I think 99% safe number of the vast majority of nudity that we have in cinema serves no necessary purpose to the storytelling. I think in most cases, if it's sexualized, we already don't need to be in that business. But then even when it's not for that necessarily, although it might involve it, I think they can always accomplish the same end with different means than simply portraying nudity. So that's my stance. And I will thwack it over the net to you, sir.
Are we playing badminton then? It's a little shuttlecock.
Yeah, it takes a little time to fall, you know. We don't have to be as quick with our reflexes.
It's not like pickleball or tennis or anything.
Yeah. And I love that you knew that it was badminton.
Yeah.
That it wasn't just like hard driving a serve at you.
Yeah. We don't, and yeah, I never played the badminton where you're slamming it. It's not Olympic badminton.
Those guys are rough. Yeah.
As a writer, filmmaker, podcaster, content creator, whatever label fits, my argument is that there is a tool. Nudity is a tool of storytelling. The question becomes, what is it you're trying to say? Just like I teach my kids, and you can disagree with me if you'd like with this one. There's no such thing as a bad word. But it's how we use it. There are words that are just blatantly hurtful, and we don't use those words. There's words that are socially unacceptable in certain situations, and you learn to avoid those words. But I believe how we use language and how we use, in this case, nudity, is the question, again, almost goes back to the whole premise of the movie. Why is it here? What is the storyteller trying to frame up? And this actually came up in our conversation about Band of Brothers. Because it must have been episode 9, Why We Fight. And there was the one female nude scene in the entire series. And your point was it was gratuitous. It's there because somebody wanted some boobs in the show. And I was like, I think they're trying to say something with it. Because in the scene, they're no longer in Bastogne. They're no longer in the snow under bombardment. They're in France, maybe even in Germany. They are winning the war. And what they're portraying is a very lighthearted duty station. They're not fighting anymore. They're enjoying. You see Spears, and he actually walks in on this clerk and the girl as they're having sex, and he's just like carry on as he goes to take his spoils of war, all the silver he had been collecting and sending home. And the clerk, they jump up and they're embarrassed, and Spears is just like, whatever. So by that nonchalance from Spears, and the fact that, like, this is the middle of, it wasn't a nighttime scene, it was during the day. Like, it's showing this idea, like, there's two different spoils of war. And that's really all they're saying. And the viewer is left to determine whether that was appropriate or not, because you don't know why the girl is there. Was she bought? Was she forced? Was she whatever? And so I came up with these different examples of different nudity in films. Like you said, that wasn't sexualized, because that's a very different conversation. And I'm going to, I'm trying to think of the word I'm looking for, because there's guys who I don't like the word triggered, but they'll get triggered even by the thought of something in the movie. Like, I know I have a friend who's like, it showed a lot of cleavage, so I can't watch that. And there's stuff that bothers people, and there's stuff that doesn't bother people. And I don't think it's all in what you do with it, I think.
Okay. That statement, it's all in what you do with it. I think that there are some things that you could apply that to. Because there are many things that are not inherently sinful, but they are much more problematic for some people than for others. And so alcohol is one that, whether it's genetic, culture you grew up in, whatever, there are people for whom that is just cyanide. Like, they don't need to get anywhere near it, because there is no self-control. And it's only a bottle of destruction. Excuse me. But we have the Master's first miracle being making the best wine anybody ever had. God gave wine to gladden the hearts of men, the hearts of men, as the psalmist says. So it is a gift, but in the wrong hands, not so much. I think when it comes to the human body and our being made in his image, and our sexuality being the single most sacred thing about us, we have to steward that with honor at every turn. And I can't imagine Yeshua or one of the disciples being a major movie producer, director, and writing and then directing a sex scene, especially when the actors are not husband and wife, right? And I get it that it's not penetrative sex, they're pretending. It's like they're still naked with each other. Like, there's no universe. If you take the movie element away, right? There's no other arrangement where we suddenly become okay with an unmarried man and woman pretending after intimacy for the sake of some story they're telling. And there's also no other arrangement in which it becomes okay, if I'm, just curious, wonder what story my neighbors are telling, and I go over and start, yeah. If I peep and Tom into their bedroom, because I'm real curious about the story, it's like, nobody's okay with that. It's only a perversion. But when we change the window into a TV screen or a big movie theater screen, suddenly this window somehow sanctifies this sexual eroticism between people that are not covenanted with each other. And what they're portraying is going to harm more people than it could potentially help. I mean, the scene that you're describing from Band of Brothers, I haven't seen it. It has only been described for me. And I'm really glad. I don't want that in my head. It's like I have one set of female breasts in my imagination, and I'm still trying really hard to maintain that line 44 years into life. There's nothing that I gain for watching that scene and now having another woman's naked body in my headspace in competition with Adina. I can learn the things about an NCO's reflexive submission to an officer. We can learn about the spoils of war. We can learn about language barrier stuff while there's still going to be some sort of sexual dalliance going on. Like there's so many different ways to tell that story without that scene. And I do think that the producers get excited about having a day in the studio where they get to audition a bunch of topless females. I think for them, that's a perk of the job, that they don't ever have to say like, oh, it's like how many, I think, and we know so many abuses out of Hollywood. I think they enjoy the power that they get in sexualizing and objectifying women for the sake of the story. For them, I think it's a lot of smoke and mirrors when they do it.
Well, I think in that scenario, you're sort of painting a pretty broad brush of making every casting director to be some lecherous person.
It's unfair without a list of names, right? And we're not going to go, that's not a homework assignment, I'm going to assume.
Right. This is not a go look at these naked things in movies but I think about how do we you said honor, and the word I like is integrity. Because how did Jesus walk through life? Because he knew great intimacy with women without it becoming sexualized. Whether it was with, Mary, who washed his feet with oil, and the woman who was a prostitute who did the same thing with her and rubbed him with her hair, the woman who was caught in adultery, probably naked there on scene. And, how would we do that? I mean, I know how we would do that today. I'm sure if The Chosen, and I actually think The Chosen did do this scene, she's covered up with a sheet. I doubt that would have happened because the Pharisees wanted to tell a story. What better way to humiliate her, the adulteress, than by pulling her out of bed with her lover naked and parading her in the streets to show Jesus, Moses said we should stone her. What are you going to say? And that's, again, the purpose. When you look at a movie like Schindler's List, definitely not sexualized nudity in that one. But what you see is a people who are stripped of their humanity and victimized. Because, and I do think that your point is very important is it the sexualized part or what role is this playing in the story? And again, I'm not encouraging you to be like, oh, let's watch that again and figure out what the filmmaker was trying to. That's not the point. The point is to say, what is its purpose? If you're watching some of those raunch comedies, yep, that's just there to get some naked women on the screen. Because that's what young men like out in the world and in the culture today. But again, going back to that idea of Jesus, how did he handle even, the Easter morning when Mary's in the garden? I would imagine she ran and embraced him. That's why he's like, Mary, you've got to let go of me. You've got to go tell the others. In what would have been very scandalous behavior, like each one of those women acted scandalously. And how did Jesus respond to that in a way that honored them and also had integrity for himself?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the scene you alluded to where we've got a grown woman pouring her life savings over it's a stupendous amount of money that she's just upending over him. And then it is a scandalous depiction that she's washing his feet with her hair. It's, it's one of those, it's hiding in plain sight for the Jewish reader. We miss it when we're reading at the speed of the lullaby effect. That her hair is down is a really big deal,
Yeah,
right?
that's right. I forgot about that.
It's the symbol of her singleness. And so I think she's making an overture at the master, like using the symbol of her singleness as the thing to adorn and dry his feet. I mean, that's just like astoundingly intimate anyway. But then when we get into the signs of covenants, like, I think she's making a play for his affection. Like, here's all of me. I am absolutely available. Make your move. And we see him honor her in that. And so I don't think it was inappropriate of her to do that. That was the most scandalous thing she could do as a gesture on this side of sin. Like, that's a Ruth and Boaz level play for marriage right there, And she does it in broad daylight, in plain view. She's debasing herself in front of everybody, and he exalts her for it. And that's the thing we see with his interactions with every woman throughout the gospel accounts. Every woman was absolutely safe in his company. Even when they were in their most desperate states, they still could not be any safer with him. The woman that gets caught in the scandalous affair. I wonder a lot how that would have gone if the man had also been presented for the accounts, like what kind of Torah would we have seen the master uphold if both of them had been present? It didn't go that way. It's just her. It went like it went with the woman that is effectively making a marriage proposal to him. And he doesn't take advantage of her. And he also doesn't use her as a prop to promote himself. It's just, it's baffling how good he is at honoring them and elevating them in the state of desperation. It's so hard not to become continually entranced with him when that's the kind of sturdy that he is. And for the guys that are promiscuous because they think they have an easier time or a harder time, depending on how they'd frame it, it's like, he's above average handsome, he's above average wealthy, he's got above average libido, and you just don't know. You don't know what my struggle's like. And I was like, I'm kind of thinking the master had you beat on all counts. Because I've never met a man that had a woman empty her life savings account, dump it at his feet, and just be completely debased before him. Like, we hear crazy stories about women being very available in a sexual capacity, but a woman that would chain the whole of her fate and livelihood to a man before he's given any indication how he's going to respond. No other dude gets to claim that. And we see the master tempted with that kind of adoration, and he still is just completely safe with her. His strength is only good for her. So bringing it back to the cinema discussion, there's a lot of women that are many kinds of not safe in the company of what I would say are lecherous producers, but also voyeuristic audience peering in with bad intention. There might be a righteous society that someday with some people would be capable of depicting nudity on screen and it be a thoroughly God-honoring event. Our culture has been so catastrophically pornified.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we need at least a century of detoxification before we could be trusted with nude depictions and it not do harm to anybody, the actors and the audience members at the same time.
Well, and that's putting a big challenge because you're putting sort of the audience reaction into the responsibility of the filmmaker or the storyteller.
Well, they are the one controlling where the audience eyes go. I mean, Michael Caine, I don't know if he has any religious bent. I don't know his story. I know a little bit about his love story with his wife. It's beautiful. But not even from any moral reasoning. Yeah, I heard him giving advice to young actors, and he said, I always advise the young actors not to do a nude scene at any point in their career. He's like, because when you're an actor, your performance determines where the audience eyes go, and you are in control of their attention. And when you are a master of your craft, their attention goes wherever you want it. It's like the instant you're naked, you've surrendered all control. That's his rule for no nudity. And so, yeah, the filmmakers are steering the ship of the audience's attention quite a lot. And I would say if they didn't want the audience to look at the nudity, it wouldn't be depicted in the first place.
Right. And my contention is, what is it are they saying? With the Schindler's List and the dehumanization. With Oppenheimer, it was really, to me, it was a very powerful scene because Robert Oppenheimer, they were in this interview room, and all of a sudden they start asking him, and his wife's right there next to him, about his relationship with a woman who is not his wife. And he is naked. You don't see anything, you just know he's naked. You know, you see, you know what I mean? All of a sudden he has no shirt on at the table. And it's like, because he felt so exposed and vulnerable and embarrassed. And then almost in the next scene, the woman who he had the relationship with is there with him, also nude, but it's his wife's perspective as she's having to relive that pain and that vulnerability, that exposure of reliving her pain of the affair, of the relationship. And it was, to me, it was a very powerful way of communicating that, because as a storyteller, you always want to show, don't tell. And it wasn't there for a shock purpose. It wasn't there for gratuitousness, but it's like, you knew he felt completely naked in that room, even though he was fully clothed, had his suit on. And his wife is there having to, as they're talking about the things that they did, his wife is having to see them in her memory. And so you see that. And so it invites you into her pain as well.
Which still leaves us with the problem of somebody else's spouses having their nude visage now out there in the world forever.
So I'm coming at it from a viewer, storyteller. What is the storyteller trying to say?
Yeah.
And you're coming at it of, this person shouldn't have been naked with somebody who wasn't their spouse.
The question that you're presenting, I don't think should be question one of, is this good? So I'm not discrediting that that's a worthwhile question to explore, but that shouldn't be the thing that's determining whether we willingly participate with nudity. Do it, again, remove the cinema element from it, and you and your wife go to a local theater production. And that very scene that you're describing happens on stage with everybody in the room. Are you still willing to give it the pass of well, what story are they trying to tell? Because you're then going to see these actors in the wings after the production, right? Congratulations, good show. Here's your flowers. I saw you naked 30 minutes ago.
Well, and that's assuming that that's all you'll see.
No, of course there's more, but the more doesn't eclipse the fact that this is a really big deal.
So I guess the question really becomes, what's the big deal? Is it the nudity that's the big deal, or the sexualization of the nudity that's the big deal?
Yeah.
Our created origin was naked. So obviously being naked isn't wrong in and of itself.
Who told you that you were naked? Right? Like, that's what God says. Who told you that you were naked? Some of the theologians play with the idea that Adam and Eve actually didn't know that they were naked because in their original state of glory, they shone so much light that they were essentially robed in phosphorescence all the time. There was a luminous garb that they wore just in their natural human radiance. And so in their nakedness, there would have been an unashamed dawning still happening. Fun to play with as a maybe. We don't live in that state anymore.
And even assuming that that Eden wasn't as ephemeral as these guys said it was, even if it was them walking around naked, you are correct. This is after the fall. We can't deny that. But to say that nudity is bad for nudity's sake, I don't. And again, as we've discussed, there are different levels of ability to handle things. And that's not even the right phrase. Like you said, somebody can't have one drink of alcohol. Gambling. There are things that we are sensitive to. And I want to be sensitive to that. And there absolutely is stuff that we shouldn't watch. But it's this, to me, it is important to differentiate the sexualization for nudity for sexualization versus nudity in general. I mean,
Yeah.
and like you said, in a very, I'm just talking about it from a storyteller, right? Like you said, going over next door and peeping at the neighbors, that's 100% wrong.
And yeah, and that's why I propose those kinds of thought experiments, because does somebody's consent, does their consent alone change the moral parameters of it being okay to be seen in this way? If the neighbors tell me they're putting on a local theater production, okay, and so now it's going to be the same scene, but they've consented to it, and it's on stage, there's big lights, and there's 100 others of us in the audience. Like, I'm really just not, I can't find a discernible line to validate that. Like, yes, let's all of us as a community go watch my buddy's wife reveal her nude body in a local performance. Let's go celebrate that and retain that memory together for the rest of our lives in this neighborhood. We're doing that on the multiples of millions in what cinema represents. And just saying that it's for the sake of a story, like you said that I was using a broad brush earlier for assuming a lot of these guys are lecherous, and I will assume that because of what they do. I don't need to accuse them presently, and I don't even have any names in mind. I don't know who casting directors are in Hollywood. And so presently they're safe. I can't eye gouge any of them. But there is so much grossness that comes out of their craft. It's hard to find any virtue in that. It's difficult to assume a virtuous disposition when this is what they're disseminating. But even without that, it's a broad brush to give a pass to nudity, so long as we can find a good narrative mechanism in it. And if you can tell the story without that means, that's what I think. Like, the human body deserves so much honor, and especially this person's spouse. They also deserve honor. Like there was, I think it was a Super Bowl commercial. It was Scarlett Johansson and her husband, the guy from SNL. Thank you. It's them hanging out, and like I think it was selling Alexa is one of the house nodes, right? Siri or Alexa, whatever. Like in their conversations with each other, the thing keeps like dropping commentary through songs. Lady knows like, yeah, that was a lie, or like, uh-oh, somebody's in trouble. It's just those sorts of like cutesy little, this is married life. And then Colin Jost, he probably wrote this joke for the commercial. They're watching a movie and he looks over, he's like, hey, when you have to do those sex scenes with all the really hot Hollywood guys, is that like the worst? And she's like, oh yeah, it's totally the worst. And then Siri's like, tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies. And it's supposed to like, and I'm horrified at that interaction. And I like, there's nothing funny I find about them joking about her sex scenes with other, and like he as her husband is supposed to be comfortable with this and is supposed to release her into this profession where she's naked with other men, so long as the paycheck is good enough and the story is worthy enough. It's like,
well, I even think that watching some of those movies of when they kiss, they show these deep, passionate kisses.
Yeah.
I'm like, how, like, I can't imagine doing that.
Yes. That right there.
Imagine watching that if my wife was an actress.
That is exactly what I'm saying. They're giving their bodies to somebody in a very intimate. Now it might be contrived, but it's still their body. And all we've done is we've taken prostitution and put a big cinematic effect over it, and then we've either diluted it or filtered it. How many people do you get to kiss for a paycheck before it's a threat to your marriage? How many people do you get to present your body to in that fashion before you have compromised your devotion to your spouse and your worship of your creator in what you're doing with your body? And I think that our body is sacrosanct in that way, so that if somebody now were going to offer me $100 to kiss them on the sidewalk, I don't think anybody would be like, was she hot? Or like, were you into it? Did you ask your wife? Everybody's just going to be like, yeah, bro, you shouldn't do that. Like, don't kiss the lady that offers you money to kiss her. But if you make it $1 million check and you put it on a movie, suddenly everybody's okay with it because there's a story attached to it.
But you're applying your judgment and your morality to other people in this scenario.
That's why we have the Bible.
No. I mean, the Bible is to guide me, but who am I to say how somebody else should be acting? Again, we're going down, this is a very different rabbit hole, but
of the things I didn't expect you to say today, that's suddenly top of the list.
They're not making me kiss somebody else. I'm not choosing that.
What do you think Paul is doing when he's writing epistles to his pastors in training of how to instruct their people to live? Like, these are standards of holiness that the community is held to.
Right.
I mean, he is doing an awful lot of expectation when he's telling the Corinthians to stop slinging it with the temple prostitutes, because when you do that, you're uniting the members of Christ with the prostitute.
But there's two things going on. One, he's writing to the church, and he's writing to people that he knows.
Yes.
For instance, like going back to the Old Testament, child sacrifice was a huge thing. That was a very common occurrence in the pagan realm. God didn't tell the Israelites to go make everyone stop doing child sacrifices. He said, you stop doing it.
Okay.
By this they will know because you are different.
Yeah. Of course, I'm assuming we're having that conversation. Like, because this is an in-house conversation, right? I'm not talking about what pagans do with their time. and trying to find an angle if I can justify that. We're talking about what God's people do with their time, and will they participate in what might actually be tantamount to a pagan celebration.
Again, to me, that's a very slippery slope, because if you're going to say, hey, you shouldn't be doing this on the screen because it would affect your spouse and it would affect your marriage. Well, where do we stop with, well, you shouldn't be engaging in that other activity that has nothing to do with nudity, but feeds your anger, feeds your divisiveness, feeds your jealousy, feeds your envy, feeds your greed. Now, I also know that you are very, very protective of what goes into your body. Correct? Like if I said, hey, Wailer, let's go get some MacDonald's. You're going to say hard pass.
Hard pass.
Right? And I don't go to McDonald's often, but I do eat out at, Taco Bell is probably worse.
Oh, interesting. Look, I see what you're tugging on. And if I was going to be militant about it, it would harm more people than it would help. Two, maybe three-parter. With McDonald's, I do think I'm right that McDonald's has been a scourge on the planet and that nothing good happens to people's bodies when they go there. In fact, a lot of harm happens when you go to McDonald's. It's the most inhumane butchering that's been practiced in the history of the world. And it's also the most unsanitary butchering that's been practiced in the history of the world, where you have an entire cow carcass thrown into the grinder. So that by the time you're getting your Big Mac, there's actual cow feces still in the beef. It's just been bleached and ammoniumized and processed 1,000 times over so that there's no living bacteria in there that's going to destroy you more, but you still have reconstituted cow shit that's now in your mouth. And that's size of life with a McDonald's Big Mac. Somebody's going to have to try really hard to come up with an argument to tell me that that's good. Now, can I do life with somebody that goes to McDonald's? Yeah, we don't have to have that argument. But I also have a lot more ground on my side than they have on theirs. Theirs is an easier arrangement, no doubt, but they can't make it good. And so I think we see some of that tension at work when Paul says that an elder has to be a man of one wife. I don't think that's necessarily a statement that if he's been divorced and now he's remarried, that he's disqualified. You know, the hyper literal translation is a one-woman man. And so there you do have a problem of what is the wisdom of this local community and how well they know this man. Has he become the kind of man that is ferociously devoted to one woman? And what kind of story precedes being able to say that? Because if you've got a 20-year-old that's been married for a year versus a 50-year-old, right? Yeah, like at what point do you earn that? At what point do you earn a man of one woman as a designation that this is imbued in you? Like this is now a quality pregnant in your masculinity. I think when Paul is writing that, we have to remember he is writing into a pagan culture that has quite a lot of polygamy going on. And so that's hard. What do? You've got Jewish culture encountering Gentile culture without Jesus, but now they're becoming Jesus people. The Jews in that day had already become almost entirely monogamous. It wasn't a matter of law yet, but it was a matter of culture and practice. So monogamy is the rule for elders in synagogue culture. Now you've got all these Gentiles clamoring in to these messianic synagogues. What is Paul going to do with this convergence of Jew and Gentile, and who becomes the leadership structure moving forward? And you've got all these polygamous households coming in. Like, what does he do? Tell the guy to pick his favorite wife instead of kids and send the rest packing, and now they can be Jesus people? Instead, what we get is an implicit line that the polygamists can absolutely be here, but only the monogamists are going to be governors in this household. And that then begins a multi-generational trajectory that, yeah, the polygamists, they'll be Jesus people. This guy and all 4 of his wives and all 20 of their kids, they're going to be in the household of faith. And it's going to be a little bit messy. But next generation, his kids are more likely to have 1 wife, maybe 2. Next generation, like, we can see monogamy becoming the rule because of this standard of eldership. And so there is a line that he's drawing, but there's also grace that he's giving in the meantime. I'm very comfortable with that kind of arrangement. I think we do have a lot of that messiness in our day, where there is a standard that's right. There is the goal, and then there's also the grace in the meantime.
It's interesting you brought that up. My dad had done a marriage seminar once when they were in Uganda. They've been married like 50 years. So they're like, hey, you're the oldest married couple we know. You tell us how to do it. Somebody asked them, hey, if somebody has had multiple wives, say they had just 2 wives, and they became a Christian, what should they do? My dad's like, I don't know. But for my dad's response, like their church response was he should get rid of the second wife. It's like, that sounds terrible, because then in that culture, you're abandoning her to poverty. And my dad's take was very similar to what you kind of align with Paul of, well, he should honor his vows, because that's what Christ would do. I mean, he would say that you made this vow, you should honor it, and Christ can be in it. Don't have another wife. Don't make it worse, but don't sort of abandon your responsibilities, because isn't that what the Pharisees would do? Is say, oh, this is to God. I've sanctified this, set this apart for God, so they would disrespect their parents because of that sort of the religious loophole. So they would get out of their obligations. Drawing a blank.
Yeah, I don't know what thing you're alluding to. I'm there with what you're saying about father-in-law. Yeah, I got that story.
No, it was just something. And I actually think that there is, going back to the MacDonald's and what goes in our bodies, whether that's our eyes, our mouths, or our ears, or anywhere else. What Jesus says, what goes in is much more important than what comes out. And so I do think whatever it is we are watching, we need to watch it with a filter. We need to watch it with the same, we should approach it with that same level of caution, because very few people have that same attitude that you have towards McDonald's. Because otherwise they would be out of business.
Yeah.
And
there's not too many people in the world. There's just too many people in the world eating at McDonald's.
Right.
Put that on a business card.
It's interesting that came up, since my last name's MacDonald. But I do think that regardless of the story, regardless of our views on nudity in filmmaking, nudity in storytelling, whatever it is you want to call it, nudity in art, as you talked about with Sam, the thing that is most important is, as it says in Proverbs, how are we guarding our heart? And how are you approaching it? If you're approaching it incorrectly, then what's coming out is going to also be incorrect. There's going to be bad fruit. And so I think that is the most important thing, is to walk with Jesus in all of this. And say, hey, should I watch this movie? Should I not? Should I listen to this? Should I listen to that? Should I go to McDonald's? Should I go to Chick-fil-A? Wherever. Do you eat at Chick-fil-A?
Yeah, I would still say not the best thing ever, but I don't have the same level of moral repugnance.
But I think that there's this that approach you take pretty consistently. I like the word you used, more repugnance. You are very guarded about much of your life. I am less so. I eat at McDonald's and Taco. And we can both be followers of Christ in our different expressions, because I've had this conversation with Matt Gleaves. Matt goes into places and like Matt can't go places I can go because he just walks in. He's like, this place has bad mojo. I got to get out of here. And it doesn't bother me. It doesn't mean that I'm less like, it's really hard because I'm like, oh, I'm not as spiritual as Matt is, so obviously the darker powers don't care if I'm there or not. No, it's just I have a different role. And I think we both express the love of Christ in our world. But I think we do need, I think the most important thing is that idea of vigilance and guarding our hearts and avoiding those things. Because I did some stuff with the AI to say, hey, what are some other movies that, I was looking for, what does nudity mean in storytelling? And there was one movie, I was like, I watched it. It was terrible. I felt like I needed a shower afterwards. And it was unpleasant. And I was really disappointed because I'd heard it was a really good movie. And I'm like, creatively shot, well done. But I'm like, I feel terrible after this. And again, Jesus says, you will know them by their fruit. What is the fruit of what you are doing? Whether that's watching a movie, going out to eat, going to the gun range, or hanging out at a fire pit. What's the fruit of the things you're doing? And I think approaching that with the same level of whatever level of vigilance God is calling you into is the important piece.
Yeah. So in principle, the premise that you have, I can get there for sure. I mean, Yeshua was never in a township that had idolatry on display. And he had to be very deliberate with his life to ensure that was the case. But then we see him commissioning Paul to go into a bunch of towns where there's a bunch of idols. We've got a sermon of him calling out the idolatry and finding the one to make a virtue so that he's got a good sermon illustration as he's moving into the gospel with these people. So yeah, there is such a thing as concentric circles of holiness in our particular kingdom assignments. And when I say holiness, I don't mean this one's better, that one's not as cool. But like, what designation of set apart have we been given? The Nazirite is set apart for different things. Not everybody's called to be a Nazirite. You only have one high priest in every generation, and he's the only one that gets to go into the most holy places. And then you've got the parts of the temple compound where the Levites can minister and everybody else just has to stand back and watch. So what assignments do we have? And what does that mean? Like the high priest, for the things that he can do, there's also a lot that he can't do. He's set apart to such an extent that he doesn't get to go to the funeral of his nuclear family members because that's going to affect his ritual purity and what he does with the temple rites every day of the year. It's like, okay, he gets this cool outfit he gets to wear. And also there's a big Annie of stuff. Yeah, huge cost. And so to look at it from that framework of where have we been assigned, in principle, totally comfortable with that. Still difficult for me to find an angle where the storytelling impulse in cinema justifying the nude portrayal of somebody for the sake of effect and it being something necessary and it being something holistically and optimally good without any objection or offense or harm. That's it's still difficult for me to find that angle. I am willing to entertain the possibility that it exists. I'm just not there yet.
And that's a much broader application. And that's a very, that's hard obviously, I've watched these movies. I think it's okay. However, when you say these applications and this impact and the changes, no one can say it's, I can't think of the right framework of, if there's no negative outcome along, I don't know. I can guarantee you it's not 100% yes.
Does it tend toward harm? Is a simpler way of stating it. In my book, a messianic rabbi referred to a scene that he just unflinchingly called a sex scene. And I didn't think of it as a sex scene because there's no depiction of sex. But because it looks like it is leading up to such things, he just wasn't shy at all. He was like, you've got Yosef and Miriam having sex. I was like, I did not. So there's a fade to black, right? The old school cinematic fade to black. Man, do I miss the fade to black, right? Fade to black as a storytelling device, I love it because we know what's happening and we don't have to see it. And so the director still gets to achieve what they want, and saucy things happened and that matters for what's going on with all these relationships. Fade to black. We don't have to see it. I fade to black in my book because with David and Bathsheba, we know what happens without a forensic description of the happening. And I think that's a significant line. That demarcation matters a lot. We see the buildup, we see all the harm and the fallout afterward, but we don't get a play-by-play of the during.
Yep, that's correct.
I am trying to see what we did. If we drew a circle that at least
I have
made
about 10 minutes left.
Yeah, well, we're effectively done, I think. I'm just trying to look for what we accomplished today.
We had a pretty good conversation.
Mm-hmm.
You helped me to appreciate different perspective on this that I hadn't thought of before. I took this approach as simply from the viewer, not all the decisions that went into all the other pieces.
Yeah, and in our space, the viewer is our
McDonald's. I just take the burger and fries.
Oh, God bless. Well, here's the thing. Let's take the viewer and let's remember that we're here, the Naked Gospel Podcast, which is an extension of Proven Ministries, and most of the people connecting with us have been suffocating in pornography for a long time. How helpful is it for them to find cinema where they enjoy or participate in nude depictions versus my eyes just don't go there anymore because there's a million other places where I can be fully and completely arrested by God's beauty on display in creation. As a man is reorienting to his wife, why the fool would he bring any other woman's naked visage into his headspace while he's actively trying to reorient to her after he has probably 10,000 hours of pornography already downloaded? I think it's a while before somebody might be trustable with that. And that's still a big maybe.
It's not to me, that's not any different than, it's why would somebody who's blown their life up with alcoholism, why would you give them a drink?
Yeah.
Which is why I was even curious about us having this conversation at all. Because I was even wondering if even just talking about bodies on a screen would be enough to trigger someone.
Interesting.
Like, it was a concern for me.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
Which, honestly, like, to me, if you're like, I'm not sure this is a helpful podcast to go out, it's fine. Again, I give you permission.
Oh, man. To get this deep and then just be like, shredder. Boop.
Maybe it was for us, right?
Maybe this little outro is also part of the episode.
I struggled with porn since I was a kid. I mean, Sears catalogs and National Geographics, because that's what I could get my hands on. And for me to arrive at a place to be set free from those chains where I could watch Oppenheimer and not want to go jerk off or anything. My wife goes out of town and I'm not because what I desire most is intimacy with her and intimacy with God. And it's not worth it, right? When that other stuff comes up, you're like, have I ever told you that story? This may just be for us as well, so that's fine.
That you're not the boss of me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for somebody who tried for decades to quit,
Do you want that story on the air?
I don't care. I'm pretty open.
I have told that story without your name in other settings because it is a wonderful story.
It's a pivot for me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll tell it. So I don't remember when, my wife and I were married, my current wife, and she and I had made a promise because of things that had led to my divorce, which included porn and adultery, which are pretty overlapping, and said, I don't want nothing, none of that will ever happen in this marriage. So I am overly transparent with my wife. She would go on a trip. She would come back. I'm like, I'm sorry, honey. I jerked off while you were gone. And her response is typically like, okay, as long as you weren't mad at me when you did it. She's like, and my wife is very unique. And she doesn't understand why. She's like, why is this a big deal? Like most people do it. Like, the best thing I can explain to her is that it's like, if I'm on a diet and I say I don't want to eat it and I go eat McDonald's, it's all about McDonald's for us today. But that's my wife. So, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't want to do this thing that I keep doing. Right. And so I remember she was working, I was at home for whatever reason, and I'm struggling, I'm fighting it. And I'm just, I've been walking the path from sort of the John Eldridge side of things, perspective from Wild at Heart stuff, and experiencing more and more freedom. And I looked down at my penis and I said, you are not the boss of me. And I can't explain it, but that chain broke. Like not that I've never wanted to, she's gone out of town and I've been scared. I was like, I don't want to become that guy anymore. But because of the richness of my relationship with her, one, knowing that if I did, I would tell her. But two, the relationship that I have with God, like I don't want anything to I mess that up enough with stuff I do now. I don't want to do something like that would destroy what I've got and would diminish what I have with her. I was like, that's worth too much to me to ever come close to that. And, you mentioned the vigilance and earlier, and I am again, working in nursing for 20 years with predominantly women, it becomes a very lonely place. And honestly, there was I had a friend and my wife was like, your guys I don't like the way you're texting, because I would show her my text messages And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. There was nothing like I felt older brother-ish towards her."
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, like I maintain a sort of a distance from women. Again, because of the history, and I don't want to give my wife any reason to ever suspect anything is going on at any time. And that same vigilance that you sort of described, that's how I approach, to the point that was like, I may be a little closed or cold to women, like wives of my friends and stuff, simply because I want to keep that boundary, that space and that gap, because I want to protect my wife's heart. And you can share or edit and whatever you want with any of that.
I love you.
Oh,
I want that on the record again. Even if you don't love my thing with quotes all the time.
I love your thing with quotes. I love your quotes. Honestly, I wish I did that for every podcast. It's had some amazing deep quote or poetry, because it's beautiful, and it's just not kind of who I am. I wish I was a poetry guy, but I'm.
I also love your deference to your wife. That's a beautiful way of honoring her, sanctifying y'all continually. It's very honorable. I'm endeared to you all over again. Thank you for giving so much of your time and your fervent heart in this conversation, where we've got some pickets, maybe no redrawn lines yet, but it's been helpful. I appreciate the challenge. Where would you like people to find you?
Best place to find what we're doing is on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@MinuteTheMovies. We have a video podcast we put out twice a month, because we get to show the movie clips, and that's pretty awesome. We can do all sorts of fun stuff with it. But if you just want to listen to the podcast, we're available on Spotify, Apple Pods, and I don't know if anybody else gets podcasts from anywhere else. You can also subscribe to our newsletter. It goes out, but because one of the things we started earlier this year is a study guide. So with every movie that comes out, you get kind of a synopsis, some key themes, some discussion questions. So if you want to go over it with your guys group, typically Men at the Movies, we're kind of dude focused, because I would not presume to speak what women think about things. And also activities. So like, how do we put into practice the lessons that we learned from this film? Like, we did Lawrence of Arabia, and it was about embracing discomfort and being comfortable being uncomfortable. And so the challenge was take a 2-minute cold shower this week and write about how difficult it was. And so, because what is it? It's not that it doesn't hurt. It's that you don't mind that it hurts. And so you can get that on our website, menatthemovies.com. We'll be doing some other stuff. That story profile work that I talked about, I'm actually going to be offering that to people at some point. So that'll be on Unlock Your Story, which is there on the Men at the Movies website. So yeah, check us out. We've got over 200 episodes, celebrating our 5th anniversary.
Dang. This just occurs to me. I didn't have this as a thought until you telling people where to find you. Thing one, I'll put all of those links in the show notes so that they're convenient and clickable and people get right to you. And here's me shamelessly inviting myself back to your podcast at some point.
Yeah.
What if the next movie you and I discuss is determined by the people that listen to this episode and then tell us what movie we do together next?
That'll be fun. Yeah, I'm all for it.
All right. So
I would suggest, Wailer, that you would give them, I would recommend like top 3 choices.
You think somebody's going to try to get me in trouble because of this conversation in particular?
Well, I know, I mean, for me, that's where I would go, being the contrarian that I am.
Let's make them watch Boogie Nights, right? Something like that.
But either that or it'd be something like Napoleon Dynamite would be pretty fun.
I trust our audience. I trust our people with my heart. and my eyes. I'm trusting
There you
them
go.
with my eyes. And also, I still have veto power of, no, my eyes don't go in that direction. So
100%.
what if I angel video something?
Angel video boogie nights would be very short.
Ooh, me. Well, now I'm just going to make Nick, because like, Nick, listen, it's for the ministry. You got to get me an angel video membership now.
There we go.
Executive director approved. Whatever we watch next is going to be fun, and we'll have a saucy conversation all over again.
Sounds good.
Buddy, you are so much fun. I enjoy every pocket we inhabit together. Thank you for being here with us.
All right. Thanks, Wailer. Love you, dude.
See you, buddy.